Hello Year 9, we are continuing on with fractions today. Today we're going to recall how to add and subtract fractions. I know that we've practiced this at different points throughout the year, so hopefully this is more of a revision lesson than anything else. But yeah, your title for today is adding and subtracting fractions. So if you have a book or some paper to write that on, it'd be great if you do that. And then here is your starter like usual, so you go ahead and get started. If you pause the video now, I will post the answers. All right, go ahead. Alright, so there you go. There are the answers to the starter. I guess you could pause this again. That's probably the easiest way to get all the answers up there. And then we will start adding and subtracting fractions. Alright. When we want to add and subtract fractions, there is one major important rule, and that is that the denominator, or the bottom of the fraction, has to be exactly the same. So for this first question, it says, work out 1/5 plus 3/5. So we can just say 1/5 plus 3/5 is 4. So 1 plus 3 is 4, and then 4/5. So if we have 1/5 in one hand and 3/5 in the other hand, and we put them together, then 1 and 3 make 4, 4/5. Okay, same thing for the next question. So we've got 7/9 plus 1/9, which just gives us 8/9. Nothing fancy happening in either of these. Next question, slightly fancy. We've got an add and a subtract. So we want to do 7 minus 4, which is 3, and then 3 plus 3, which is 6, and the denominator is going to be 10. Now 6 out of 10 is an absolutely fine answer. We can make it even better. We can simplify this fraction by dividing the top and bottom both by 2. So we get 3/5. And there we go. That is the nicest, most simple way for us to add and subtract fractions. Unfortunately, not all fractions have the same denominator, and when they don't, we have to make the fractions have the same denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to change 1/5, and we're also going to change 2/3 so that we make two brand new equivalent fractions. So we made equivalent fractions the other day, we're going to make them again today. So first thing we need to do is we need to look at 5 and 3. And thankfully, we've just recently talked about factors and multiples. So we're actually going to look for what do 3 and 5 have in common. We're actually going to try to find out what is the lowest common multiple. Now, if you're not sure what it is in your head, I would just start writing out the times tables. So I'm going to write out my 5 times tables. So I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Hopefully that will be enough. I'm going to do the same thing with my 3 times table. So I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Hopefully I can find something in common. All right, so I look at my two lists and I ask myself, do they have any numbers in common? And they do. They both have the number 15 in them, which means I can make two new fractions which are both going to be out of 15. So I'm going to make something over 15 plus something else out of 15. Now, the reason why 15 is a useful number is because, like I said, it's the lowest common multiple of 5 and 3. So then I have to ask myself, how do I get from 5 to 15? And I multiply that by 3. Now, whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, to the denominator, I also have to do to the top, the numerator. So I'm going to also times the top by 3. 3 times by 1 is 3. That fraction is done. 1/5 and 3/15 are the same thing. They are equivalent fractions. I'm going to do the same thing with 2/3. I ask myself, what do I have to multiply by 3 to get to 15? And the answer is 5. So whatever I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top. So I multiply that by 5 as well. And this fraction is going to become 10 over 15. So 2/3 is the same fraction as 10 over 15. Now, hopefully you can see both of the denominators are the same, so I can go ahead and add these together. 3/15 plus 10/15 is 13/15. Okay, that question is completely and totally finished. Most complicated part of the entire question is this step right here where we find the common denominator. In this question, we're going to do the same thing, except for we're going to try to subtract. So we've got 11/12, take away 3/4. So we need to find out what do 12 and 4 have in common. So we start by writing out their times tables, 12, 24, 36, 48, and 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So let's look and see if they've got anything in common. I can see 12. I can also see 24. Now, you can actually use 12 or 24, but I would recommend that you use 12. I would always recommend that you use the lowest common multiple. So we're going to make two new fractions, and they're both going to be out of 12. And then after that, we can subtract them. So we look at the first fraction. What do we have to do to get from 12 to 12? We don't have to do anything at all. So we don't have to change the first fraction at all. It just stays as 11 out of 12. How do we get from 4 to 12? We're going to do times by 3. So whatever we times the bottom by, we also have to times the top by. That gives us 9. Now we have two fractions which are equivalent to the first two fractions, and we can go ahead and subtract them. So 11 twelfths take away 9 twelfths is 2 twelfths, and we can make this answer even better by simplifying it. We get 1 out of 6. All right, there we go. That's how we subtract fractions. On the last example of today, we're going to try to work out how to add fractions where the two fractions are both mixed numbers. So we've got 5 and 2/3 plus 2 and 1/4. So the first thing we want to do is write both of these mixed numbers as improper fractions. So we're going to times by the bottom and add the top. So we've got 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 more is 17. And 2 times by 4 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. So 9 out of 4. So we want to add those two fractions together. Now, as you can see, we've got 3 and we've got 4. Those two fractions, or those two numbers, are not the same, so we need to find a number that is the same. So we've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. All right, I'm going to stop there. Hopefully we see something that's the same. I can see that 12 is in both of these lists. So I'm going to make two new fractions, and they're both going to be out of 12. So out of 12 and out of 12. So now I have to ask myself, how do I get from 3 to 12? And that is times by 4. So I'm going to times the bottom by 4 and the top by 4. 17 times by 4, that is 68. And then I'm going to ask myself, how do I get from 4 to 12? And that's times by 3. So I'm also going to times the top by 3. That's 27. So now I have to go ahead and add those two together. So 68 plus 27, that is 95 out of 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and think about how many times does 12 go into 95. Now, if you're not sure, you can always write out your 12 times tables. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, and 96. All right, so we need to stop right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it goes in 7 times. And then we got to count how many is left over from 95 if we stopped at 84. Oh, I think there's 11 left over. 11 out of 12. So that's our final answer. 5 and 2/3 plus 2 and 1/4 is 7 and 11/12. Right, these questions are quite tricky today, so if you get stuck on these ones, that's absolutely fine. As long as you can add and subtract the basic ones, I'm happy with that. Let me know if you have any questions.